Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
Hi, everybody. Today, my guest is Harley Sitner. Harley is the owner of Peace Vans in Seattle. And we got started and I didn't hit the record button. That is why I'm chuckling. So, Harley, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott.
So, I think we'll just jump right in. There's got to be a great story to Peace Vans and your involvement. Why don't you take our listeners through the evolution?
Yeah, I mean, I like to say it's the classic founder story where, you know, my daughter had just been born. I had lusted after a classic Westphalia Volkswagen bus my entire life, you know, driving down Baja in the early 90s and, you know, just really wanting, you know, a VW so bad. And it just was never the right time. And I never had kind of the mechanical inclination to really like take that risk. And then after my daughter was born in 2010, I was like, oh my God, I need my own escape pod here. And so I finally pulled the trigger, bought a Vanagon, and of course had the classic experience of like, oh my God, these are the worst vehicles ever made. It never runs. Like all the stories were true. And I struggled to find like a good mechanic or like even a mechanic that would answer the phone and I found this teeny little shop in the Soto neighborhood of Seattle called Peace Vans. And sadly, they were just as bad as everyone else. But, you know, they had a cool name. You know, they had a cool vibe. But, you know, the owner was closing and he couldn't run the business. And I was kind of like, well, at least if I take this over, at that time, I just stopped working at Microsoft a few years ago, spent a few years doing small businessy stuff. And I thought, well, if I take over Peace Vans, at least I'll always have a mechanic to work on my personal van. And when I came home and told my wife that, she was like, wow, you're just like batshit crazy. Like this is like your worst idea ever. And I was like, that's the indication I'm doing the right thing, as much as I love her. And I do. So it wasn't really even a negotiation. I basically, you know, gave the previous owner a bit of money and took the keys and, you know, kept his staff on. And that was 8 years. It was almost 8 years ago. And we're trending. Wow. I mean, there were 3 employees. We're up to 21. You know, revenue is, you know, with the Mercedes business, I mean, revenue is now like 30 or 40 times what it was when I took it over. You know, we have 3 lines of business. So yeah, it was kind of like a very serendipitous decision. And one that's really just set my life in a really interesting journey. And I'm eternally grateful for taking the risk and making the decision.
I want to just share my Vanagon story.
Yeah, everyone has a Vanagon
right,
story.
Mine's probably just like everybody else's, but I was working at Starbucks and one of my coworkers had I think it was an 80. It was in the last year of the air cooled. So it was a 79 or an 80 right now.
Oh God, those are the worst.
Okay. Well, it gets better.
Air cooled Vanagons.
Yeah. And so I just wanted one. I mean, I wanted an old, you know, split window or something like that, but he sold it to me for $500.
Uh-huh.
And I'm super excited because I had been recently divorced and my 2 little kids, I thought they'll love this thing and we'll go camping. And I'm not a camper. That's not my thing, but I thought my kids will love it. This will be great. What could go wrong? So I buy it, I bring it home and it was there for a little while. And my kids come over for the first time and I couldn't get them to go on the pop top. They were terrified of it.
Wow.
They just wouldn't do it. That's my daughter, who is, you know, she's our other host on this podcast, you know, and she'll probably kill me for sharing this, but you know, I just wouldn't go in it. She wouldn't go in it. And so I bought this, you know, beat up Vanagon that they were terrified of. And I think I maybe drove it all of about 200 miles because when I finally got around to like, okay, now what do I do with this thing? It wouldn't run. It was just like, I think I sold it for $50 to somebody up in Canada and they just came and took it away.
Only be out $450 on that transaction. You are way ahead.
Right. And I've learned since then, you know, that you're right. The restoration costs, the mechanical costs of it would have, you know, their college fund would have been spent. And then some. That's my story. I still think they're really cool.
With that said, they are incredibly unique vehicles still to this day. There's still nothing like it available.
Right. So this was in the mid 90s probably. And, back then people were doing is they were putting Subaru Boxster motors in the back end, or a Porsche. If you had money, you'd put a Porsche motor in it. Well, I didn't have either. So when you guys are restoring them, I guess maybe I'll just transition to the restoration aspect. So you're renting, and let's go this way. You're restoring them and you're renting them. And so when you rent them, you don't want to give somebody a vehicle that's going to be a maintenance nightmare. So what do you guys do when you go through these vehicles that are now 30 years old? Kind of share with us that. How do you get them ready to rent?
Sure. Well, the rental business started, again, like with everything with Peace Vans, very serendipitously.
Okay.
We had 4 vans we were going to restore and resell. And, reselling restored vans is just not part of our business model. It's just not, it's selling used stuff is just yucky. And, we'll help you restore your van. So we decided we'd take these 4 vans and basically start a rental company, because I thought, oh my God, like how much fun would that be? And then I rapidly realized, oh my God, like what a potential nightmare this is. These are some of the worst vehicles ever built, most romantic vehicles, and singularly functional. So basically we made the commitment because we are essentially like the best shop in the US for these vans. I mean, I've hand recruited my mechanics, and, we run the business with an extreme attention to precision and excellence. And so we basically took those 4 vans and put them through that entire restoration process. And part of what was driven by with that was I did not want the call in the middle of the night. Well, it doesn't happen in the middle of the night because you're sleeping and camping. But first thing in the morning or late at night, like, oh my God, my van won't run, or they won't start, or, something's making a weird noise. So at a minimum, we spend $25,000 on each of the Volkswagen rentals before they go into the rental fleet. So they get a rebuilt motor, maybe an old water boxer rebuilt. We're increasingly putting, Subarus in the rentals. They get the entire interior is refreshed. All the coolant system, which is the Achilles heel of the Vanagon, is replaced with all the silicon hoses and proper fittings. The suspension is overhauled. I mean, we go over and beyond on these vans, and we see not so much competitors because everyone's really friendly in the market, but we work on other companies' vans that rent these. Mm-hmm. Either in emergency situations or they need something done. And we're like, oh my God, the level we take these vans to is extreme. Like, these are extremely well running vans. And I like to say, frankly, like our breakdown rate is, it's less than 2%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think better than Hertz or Avis.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've rented a car before, and new car, and it broke down on me. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And if there is an issue, we have the most incredible team to support it. And we turn it into an adventure, and it's fun. And, the family gets a great story out of it inevitably, because, maybe like this past season, there may be 4 or 5 issues out of, I think, 300 renters. And, wow. And inevitably they were something funny happened. Okay. By the time someone pulled up beside them and started telling them about their old Volkswagen and said, oh, have you tried looking at this? And sure enough, van was running again. Just really fun stories like that. So to answer your question though, the rentals are, I wouldn't hesitate to take any one of our rentals on a cross-country trip.
And how many rentals do you have right now? How big is your fleet? Yeah.
So we have 10 Volkswagen Vanagons. And then we have 10 of the new modern Mercedes pop-up campers. And then we have one 70s era bus that we've converted to electric, which is kind of like a demo project, really fun, and, only for day rentals for weddings and things like that.
And I'd like to circle back to that story, because I think that's kind of maybe an interesting segment. So you're renting out 300 trips a season, and that was during a pandemic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. COVID it's been a fascinating time to own and operate this business.
And when I talked to Sam before, you and I, she had mentioned that pre-pandemic, a lot of your clients this was a destination. They'd fly into Seattle. They'd take the van. So they were from somewhere else in the U.S. Let's just say Chicago.
Yep.
They'd come in. They'd rent a van. They'd go tour the Northwest. Mm-hmm. But right now, it seems like what she was saying is that a lot of your renters are locals who are looking for a way of escaping their homes for a little while, getting out of the house.
Very much so. I mean, when COVID hit in March, I think we had something like 140 cancellations, but March, April, May. And we were kind of like, I told my team, this is either going to be like, we're going to have no rentals, or it's going to be like, it's going to come back and be insanely busy because no one's getting on an airplane or, and yet historically about 85% of our renters, technically 82% of our renters came from outside of Washington state. Okay. And we were, a destination vacation. We were their big trip for the year. They would come to Seattle for 2 or 3 nights on one end of the trip and then do a 6-night, 7-night, 8-night rental. And then maybe a night on the back end. This was it. This was their big trip of the year. And maybe they'd never been to the Northwest and dreamed of it. And all those people had to cancel. And we were, I'll be honest, the Volkswagen shop closed for a month. I was really nervous if anyone was ever going to plop down $100,000 on a brand new modern Mercedes camper van ever again. Mm-hmm. But the rental business was, we had a working hypothesis that, to your point, summer's going to happen and people are going to need to do something. And if this continues the way it's looking like it's going to, we might have the absolute perfect thing. So we really tried to distill down a program that would be good for local people. And maybe they had, already toured the Olympic Peninsula or, how do we make it really special for them or accessible for them? Because, a 6 or 7 night rental gets to be a lot of money and it's hard to justify that if it's, your second time going around the peninsula or going to Mount Rainier, et cetera. So we really, tried to go deep on our itineraries. We lowered our minimums. This season it ended up, it was a 100% flip. About 85% of our renters were local.
Well, and I'm glad you touched on your itineraries because I'm literally looking at your Olympic Peninsula one right now. And the depth that you guys provide is pretty amazing.
Yeah. And you're looking at the publicly available itinerary. We have a whole portal and there's an equal amount of content that's accessible only to booked renters.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We really want people to, just have an incredible experience. And some of our renters, they show up, they have no idea where they're going, Okay. I mean, they're like, oh, you had an itinerary? And some of the renters, they follow it to a T. And if we just want to provide whatever level of service you want. And it's so much fun to think through, okay, where's the best place to get there's a cafe as you approach Hood Canal, and it's an old 50s gas station, and they have the most incredible grilled cheese sandwiches, And so how do we surface that information and make that accessible? And, so you're not wasting half your vacation trying to find that amazing experience. We can sort of serve that up to you.
Only to end up at some really horrible place and have a bad grilled cheese sandwich.
Exactly. Yes. And a bad grilled cheese is like a bad experience. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think this is great because you've got I'm just reading, day one, Seattle Dungeness County Park. You got it down to 90 miles, 3 hours, including 30 minutes on the ferry. You're setting expectations. And if I'm with young kids, I know what I'm into for the day. Not a 12-hour trip between point A to point B and hope that they survive in the van because they're going to be bored. No, this is great that you guys have done this. And this has been a lot of work, I'm guessing that, and it's an it's always evolving. I guess you're adding and taking away things as things change. So the Olympic is your most popular tour?
Yeah. Interesting. Historically about 50% of the renters do an Olympic loop. It shifted a little bit last year with, all these local people. But I mean, the Olympic Peninsula it's pretty insane. What is out there? I mean, Yeah, I think it says it on the itinerary, but you have a mountain range, snow-capped mountains. You have a desert. Like Squim is technically like a desert. You have a rainforest. You have coastal beaches. You have hot springs. I mean, it's crazy what you have on the Olympic Peninsula. And it can be a perfect driving loop. Mm-hmm. So for road trips, it's incredible.
I'd normally ask these type of questions towards the end, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah, if I were to say, here's the keys to one of your vans and you can take it for a week, where would you go? What would be your trip?
The trip I really want to go replicate and redo is Vancouver Island. Okay. Unfortunately, Canadians are wise and not letting Americans in right now.
Yeah, there's that.
But Vancouver Island is just a magical destination. Okay. So I would do that. I would also probably, really explore the eastern side of the state or Eastern Oregon. I mean, there's so much out there, and the sky is really big, and the distances can be longer, and it's got kind of a really remote feeling. The eastern parts of Washington and Oregon, and they're really untapped.
Yeah, there's some great stuff. I mean, I'm based in Wenatchee, and there's some great drives over here. And I'm from the west side originally, and we moved over here like 3 years ago. And it's nothing to drive 150 miles now to go somewhere. It's no traffic. It's not like driving through Seattle, not like driving through Tacoma. Mm-hmm. And no, one of these would be very cool over here.
Yeah.
So you put the itineraries together, but you also, I love the fact you've got your numbers. I mean, you're rattling off percentages, and you're saying that this is, so you've obviously done a lot of research and paid attention to what your vans are being used for. What's another popular drive that people are using these for?
Yeah, the Oregon coast.
Okay.
We send a lot of customers down to the Oregon coast. They love it. It's the first day can be kind of long. So we send them south, and then they loop back up north. And there's just some, the scenery along that coast is epic.
Right.
And there's amazing food, and there's great camping options, and there's hiking. It's really like a spectacular, if you've never been to the Pacific Northwest, like those, because most people think, beaches, they're thinking of the California beaches or the Florida beaches, like the Northwest beaches with the giant logs and the low tide stretches of sand, and, kind of it can be somewhat temperate weather. It's a whole different feel.
So normally we keep this podcast all about Washington State, but I got to ask, because this sounds so cool, and I need to hear the return trip. But you've got the Santa Cruz trip here.
Yeah.
So it's a one-way trip.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's got to bring the van back.
Yeah.
I'll volunteer.
Yeah.
But who do you rent them down there and bring it back up here?
Yeah. We have the capacity to do rent on the return. We have a network of partners. And we actually have partners in San Francisco, San Luis Obispo, LA, and Santa Cruz. For COVID, we really dialed that program back. But next year we hope to reinvigorate it. There's complexity on our end. We try to shield you from it, of getting it rented on the return. But we're pretty good at it, and you don't have to worry about that. You just drop the off at one of our partners, and you have kind of the classic. Yeah, I mean, Highway 1's up there with like Route 66. It's an archetype in the American landscape.
No, that's very cool that you guys have done that. And I didn't read the fine print that says one-ways are currently canceled due to COVID. So
I know.
For those of you listening, don't pay attention to this last segment.
Everything's canceled due to COVID.
Right. So what do people rent from you more? Are they renting the Volkswagens, or are they renting the Mercedes?
It's both, and it's a really interesting split. I mean, we are very transparent with people. There's two things that the Mercedes is really good at. Reliable air conditioning while you're driving. So if you're kind of like higher maintenance, or maybe you're going to be going on the eastern side of the states in July or August, like, I'm the first to admit, like, I love rolling down my windows and turning up the music. but my daughter gets pretty hot in the back of the Vanagon.
Okay.
So the AC is nice. And then, the vans, if you have an infant, like a rear facing car seat, or you're really, the Mercedes have the latch connection into the rear seats. The Vanagons, we have retractable 3-point seat belts. And, I've rolled with my kid in a Vanagon since day one. And lots of people do. But if you're really, one of those parents that's really, you're reading kind of the labels on everything, and nothing the matter with that. The Metris we prefer you to be in a Metris because you're going to be a little less nervous.
Okay. I've never been in a Metris, so why don't we shift over to those for a second? So you guys are converting them from Mercedes. Is that correct? You have an official relationship with Mercedes to do this?
We do. We do have an official relationship with Mercedes. That's a whole nother podcast, how that got created. Super fascinating. I sometimes, wake up and be like, wow, I can't believe we have an official relationship with Mercedes-Benz. Very unique. They don't do a lot of those. Or at least I was educated after the fact that they don't do a lot of those. So yeah, we had been asked for years, where's the modern camper van? Why isn't Volkswagen doing this? You can get them in Europe and blah, 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 blah. And so we took it upon ourselves 4 years ago to really try to create a modern camper van. And at that point, Mercedes had this vehicle called the Metris, which is like a high-performing minivan built for the commercial market that they just started bringing into the U.S. It's like a little cousin to the Sprinter. And they were converting them in Europe. So I went over to Europe and talked to a bunch of vendors and frankly took a lot of risk and brought a lot of material over here and started building them. And then we started getting some really interesting attention. And of course, people were like, oh my God, the modern camper van, this is like the unicorn, where, how can I buy it? So we started selling them and that got momentum. And then Mercedes started paying attention to us because of the volume we were doing. And fast forward to, it'll be a year in February, they announced an official partnership with us at the Chicago Auto Show, which was honestly, I think it was the last auto show before COVID. And maybe even the last auto show ever, who knows industry. And so those vans they're fascinating vans because they're the dual driver that can also be a camper van. They're the Vanagon, but it's reliable. It's a 2020 Mercedes. It's computer controlled. It's got a warranty. It's got air conditioning. It's got the the latch point for this car seats. It's it's a modern vehicle. With that said, and I always tell people this, I mean, when I have my choice of what I drive, I prefer to drive my VW. It's just much more fun. People wave at me. I get conversations at the gas station. But if I really have to get from A to B, reliably, and it's and quickly, I'll jump in one of the Mercedes.
Okay.
So we see people, I mean, so that's, that's kind of where that business started and how that business started. And now we're selling, I mean, we'll end this year with maybe 140 on the road. And we hope to do about 400 next year.
Wow.
Yeah. So fairly significant numbers. Pretty exciting.
I had no idea that you would be, I was thinking, couple 3 dozen type thing.
No, it's
not one a day.
We'll sell every single van Mercedes can get us next year. And there's a very good chance we're going to be sold out by January for all of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
In layman's terms, to do a full conversion, how long does that take you guys?
We budget about 170 man hours. So,
wow. Okay.
It's pretty extensive. I mean, we start with a naked cargo van. We cut out windows. We cut out the hole for the pop top. We install a floor, a proprietary rail system. We build the cabinet. We wire up the cabinet. It's pretty extensive what we do.
I'm looking at one on your site right now with it's a picture of a little girl sitting with the slider open and a little boy sticking his head out. So you know what photo I'm talking about. So you're cutting the windows in these things. You're really just buying. These are panel vans.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're putting the glass in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're insulating them. We're and we have that in our DNA from restoring Volkswagen.
Wow.
Like we're really good at it. And it's interesting because, there's no straight lines in a vehicle. It's like a boat. Building in vehicles and building in boats is really, really hard. And you see a lot of people building in vehicles. They don't realize that, and then they're stuck, and they take a lot of shortcuts. Okay. And a lot of vehicles, if they're not professionally built out, they end up like not looking good, and they end up falling apart fairly quickly.
I had no idea that you were doing. I understand the concept of the putting the camper in there, the whole thing, and cutting the top, but I didn't realize you're putting the floor in. And I mean, the scope of what you guys do.
And I'll be transparent. Like, I think more impressive is like, we didn't know what we were doing when we started. Like the journey,
you just cut open a Mercedes.
Yeah. The journey was arduous. And I think like the first one took us like 7 months to really get right. And the second one, maybe 3 months, and then the third one, there's a curve there.
Right.
And, but yeah, we really, and figuring out the trim and the transitional elements and how do we make it look like an OEM Mercedes when we're done? And that's really what Mercedes saw when they came out to visit us and we started working with them. They're like, okay, you guys have nailed this. This looks like an OEM Mercedes when it's done. Because Mercedes does not take that stuff lightly.
No, I'm looking through some photos. That's one of the fun things about doing the shows. I can always look at people's websites while we're talking, and I'm looking at the attention to detail that you guys are putting in. The insulated blackout panels, things like that.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's insane. And, there's not a lot of people converting these. And we are by far the most expensive. And sometimes I get asked, I'm like, what I'm just like, just doing apples to apples. And like, yeah, honestly, like the other people converting them, they should be a lot cheaper than they are. Like,
okay.
I think they just look at our price point and say, well, we're going to be a little bit cheaper than Peace Vans. But the quality is just like, so, there's one or two people that are trying to do a good job, but, what we do, and it drives me, the owner, insane. I'm just like, can't we do this faster? Can't we do this, like at a lower cost? And my team's just like, nope, we're not compromising on quality. And, that's just, and which is the right decision. And I don't generally want to do that, but there's days where I'm like, can't we go faster?
So how big is your shop now? Because you've expanded.
Yeah. So part of the Mercedes, it's an interesting business story. Part of the Mercedes relationship basically required us to partner with a manufacturing partner. So we build the bulk of these Mercedes vans. Mercedes has a factory in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And so Mercedes, when they approached us, they're like, there's no way Peace Vans can scale to the numbers we want. And frankly, they were like, frankly, it's going to take 2 years for you to get through like our engineering and legal reviews, and our lawyers are going to want to meet with your lawyers. And, and like, it's just not going to, it's like, there's this company that's here in South Carolina with a factory next to the factory. They're really good guys. Come out and meet them. They can help you build them. And I was just like really reluctant. I was like, it's a bunch of car guys from Akron, and I'm from Detroit. So, my family's car group. So I'm not really, but I was just like, oh my God, this is my baby and this is our quality. And like, are these guys really going to get it? And it turns out the company, their name is Diverge, and they're the number one manufacturer of handicap accessible vehicles in the US. So They were like, it was like a heart connection. Like they're totally mission driven. They love, they love what we do. We love what they do. They're building under a very tight regulatory quality regime anyway because of the accessibility market. So they really got it. So they actually build, and we embedded a team over there for months. And so they build most of the vans for us. So we occupy about 25,000 square feet here in Seattle. Spread across three or four facilities, but and we'll make probably 100 vehicles here next year in 2021. Okay. But yeah, a lot of the manufacturing is done. And then the other thing is the vehicles go from the factory in South Carolina to, our facility in South Carolina now. So it's kind of a seamless thing. And then when Mercedes wants to look at stuff and check stuff out, they're not getting on a plane coming out to Seattle. They literally walk across the street.
Okay. So,
but the growth has been daunting. I mean, it's like it's really, we've added people at the kind of overhead level, marketing and operations and sales support and delivery support. And, as the owner, you're just like want to be thoughtful about that. But, we're able to attract amazing people and build an amazing team. So it's fun.
Well, it sounds like it. Mm-hmm. And okay. So I was trying to figure out what this is. And this is a cooler. Is it Dometic?
Yeah. So we have two versions of the van. We have what we call a weekender, which is a pop top and a big seat in the rear that folds into a bed. And a lot of those customers will buy like a little electric cooler. Because those vans we build, they have like a second battery system, and you plug that cooler in. The full camper version has a built-in refrigerator.
Right.
So you don't really need that cooler.
So the cooler's for like the weekender. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now what I really want to know, because this speaks to me, is this electric van conversion.
Uh-huh.
You have a video on your website.
Yeah.
I don't know who the guy is, but you've taken a Vanagon down to the frame, basically with the driver's seat, and he's got his hands up in the air like it's like in an amusement park ride.
It was a moment. I mean, it was a real moment because the story of that. I mean, it's funny because just last night I was helping my daughter. She's 10, helping her clean up her art table. We actually raised the legs on it because she's outgrown it, and we found this picture of the Lemon car. What this electric product, and I looked at her, and it was from Burning Man. I've been going to Burning Man for like 22 years, and I really got fixated on bringing my daughter. And for those of your listeners that don't know, like Burning Man actually, it can be a very kid-friendly environment. It is not just like drug, sex, and nudity. It's art, it's relationship, it's a beautiful thing. And I really wanted to bring her, but I really didn't want to be dealing with like meltdowns way out miles away and like on her bike and dust storms. So I was like, I'm going to build an art car. And I'm like, if anyone can build an art car, and I had built them before, but like I have a whole shop. Like I have like the most talented people in the United States. Like we can do this. And then I thought, wait a minute, let's make it electric. Like let's really like push the envelope here and learn something here. And I was looking at that picture last night with her, and I said, Eden, you do know it's insane that we actually pulled off this project, that we built, and we took an 84 Vanagon, and we like stripped it down. We completely carcassed it out, and then we built it, converted it to electric. And then we built it into a giant lemon. And there is kind of the subtext of like the Vanagon is in many ways the ultimate lemon. That wasn't really the design intention of the project. It had to do with like lemonade and children and sparking your dreams. And but it was so much fun, and we learned so much. And we're like, oh, God, we really need to make a business out of converting old VWs to electric. And so we started up that business, and we're just wrapping up the one we were supposed to wrap up last year, but with COVID, everything got delayed. And the thing is going to be a monster. I mean, it's going to be so much fun to drive. It's a 1977 VW bus. It's on our website right now as Frida on the rental.
I'm looking at it right now.
And it's going to be like, we're going to have to dial down the motor because it'll go 90 miles an hour.
That's the part that I want to try.
I know. We'll put the motor at like 40% of capacity, and but we've learned a lot, and I think there's really actually like a viable business taking Beetles, Gias, VW buses, and converting them to electric because, honestly, at this point, the cost of like reconditioning them is just on internal combustion stuff is really high. And like the electric motor and everything around it, it should last, 20 years.
So do you think that the vans, do you think you can keep them as campers with the electric? Do you think that's a possibility in the future?
So for the van, again, there's still more work that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
The older air-cooled buses, they're lighter weight. The challenge with electric camping, and we get asked this question all the time, very few campsites have charging stations.
Right.
Oftentimes you want to like crank out a long day or two on your road trip. And it really like electric is not right now the best use case scenario. Like camping is not the best use case scenario for electric. With that said, I have a feeling in 2 to 3 years, we'll be doing full electric conversions on Vanagons. Some of it is getting the entire Tesla drivetrain.
Okay.
Right now, we use Tesla batteries. It's been hard to get the entire drivetrain, but that's becoming, as they scale up, that's becoming more of a viable option to actually like plop in or another end-to-end, like the e-Golf. Volkswagen has the e-Golf, like taking that whole drivetrain and just plopping that in. We'll probably, and we want to see range get a little better on the battery. So you can do, if your campground doesn't have a charging station, you can get to the next destination reliably.
I wonder with the Tesla Cybertruck with the reported 500-mile range, if you could,
throw a camper on the back of that.
Yeah. Well, or take it and put it in something cool, because the Cybertrucks, not that these are good looking, but these are just, I'm sorry, they're iconic.
I know. Yep.
And when you see an old 60s Volkswagen bus on the road running, you pay attention to it.
Yeah.
You don't see them much anymore.
Yeah.
And to have one being electric and maybe becoming reliable.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it would be so cool.
It can be the thing we've had interest from people, for example, a family that lives on, Orcas Island, or they spend a lot of time on Orcas Island. That's where their VW bus lives. It's their island vehicle.
Sure.
They, it's kind of like, well, you could spend like, $25,000 rebuilding the motor, going through the fuel system and blah, 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 and still not be super reliable. Or you can probably, right now, maybe spend like 40 or 45 and have something that starts, stops, and goes 100% reliably every single time.
To me, that's a no-brainer. If I'm going in, I'm going in on that.
Yeah. So super fun, super exciting projects. And I do think, we like to incubate new businesses at Peace Vans. We have the vintage shop and the rentals. We have the modern business. We tried a camping rental outfit, like a gear outfit renting company. And then, the electric thing is this thing. And then we do want to build out this Peace Vans camps thing, these private campsites. So kind of like, we like incubating things here.
I'm glad you brought that up, because as these conversations always meander around, we loop back to things. You mentioned the private camping. And so what I was going to ask you just before I was going to ask you that is, when somebody rents a van from you and they're going out, and let's say they're doing the Olympic mountains and all that, and what comes in the van? Do you guys provide, and
we take great pride in everything that's in that van. It's 122 unique items. It's everything from like kimchi flavored sea salt to I think what the most pedestrian item is, maybe a garlic press or like thermal mugs, or it's everything, and it's all hand curated. We often say, I think it even says on our website, it's not like we go to Goodwill and get the stuff. It's just the opposite. Like every year when we make a huge donation to Goodwill, because we don't want worn stuff in our kits. So you get a kitchen kit with like the nicest like utilities in there. You get a plate dish kind of pot kit, and a lot of our camping equipment comes from GSI, a good local Washington company, makes super high quality camping gear. You get, this really cool spice kit. You get a French press and a pound of coffee ground for a French press. There's all these little like touches in there. You get the headlamps, you get the first aid kit, you get, there's a linen package if you want it with really like high thread count linens and nice blankets. We really go over the top with everything that's in the van. And, I think the only thing we don't include like a potato ricer. So if you want to make mashed potatoes, you're going old school.
You're going old school.
But yeah, it's really, really a thoughtful set. We don't want, and again, it's designed for people that are flying in. Mm-hmm. So we want people to be able to just fly in and hit the road and go and pick up some groceries and they don't, and even for local people, we want to avoid, I've had that argument with my wife where I forgot the chef's knife or I forgot the one thing that oftentimes it's the corkscrew. I'll admit it. You can't open the wine.
Can't open the wine.
And thank God for screw caps. But we really try to make sure like everything is in there. So it's really a thoughtfully packaged set of stuff.
That's awesome that you guys do. I mean, literally, somebody could be, flying in from say Chicago and have Amazon deliver the food to you guys.
We've done that. Yeah, right. We've had Instacart, deliveries, and we just load up the van and you hit the road. There's some Washington State liquor control board stuff around like beer that we can't do that, but everything else is and cannabis.
Right.
We can. Those are two things we can't supply.
Okay. No, that's awesome that you guys are providing, a curated list of things that because you probably are getting feedback from people like they said, oh, we needed a potato ricer. I'm joking about the potato ricer, but they said, oh, we could have really used a chef's knife. And you're like, okay, next time we'll have a chef's knife on the thing. And you just keep going. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's really
fun. And the fact that it's not, mismatched set from Goodwill or Value Village or someplace like that. You're
it's impeccable. I mean, the feedback we get is like, people will say, oh, and the knives were even sharp, and we're like, yeah, we freaking sharpen them every month, because
okay.
Well, there's nothing worse than like,
no, you're right.
a knife is actually dangerous. It's not only bad, it's dangerous.
Right. Okay, so you also then mentioned the private campgrounds. I'd like to talk about that for a second because Sam brought that up in passing, and so I was like, been curious about that. Tell us about those.
Yeah, the impetus for it was there were a couple. There was a business impetus around. Some people would show up, and the non-planners would show up like in July for a week and not realize like, oh my God, like the really popular campgrounds, like they were booked 5 months ago. And like, right. And so we really wanted to have like a release valve, for that. So, so there wasn't a lot of pressure. But then also, while many of the public campgrounds are amazing and in like very unique places, like in the national park or a state park or proximity to an amazing thing, a lot of them are just crowded and they're not great camping experiences. And we really wanted, just like we want to curate an impeccable van and an impeccable set of, utilities in the van, we want the actual like camping experience to be like as perfect as possible too. So like creating these private campsites really felt like a great extension of that. So, we have a handful, and we're really expanding that this winter, making, just some new partnerships. We're actually acquiring some of our own, land to create our own, and they're just wonderful. And one of the best things about it, you don't need a reservation. Like you can just roll up to them. They're managed in such a way where, there's never more than one or two of our renters there. And there's plenty of space. And if there is a night where there's 3 renters, you kind of know each other, and you're not on top of each other, though it's enough fire rings and picnic tables for the overflow scenario. And it's just a very friendly vibe. And we really try to put them in beautiful spots and out of the way spots and, create just a very low stress way for you to have kind of an off the grid, out of the giant campground camping experience.
So currently, what areas are these in?
Most of them are on the peninsula, because that's where most of our renters go. We're developing, we're really trying to carve out a few in the Methil Valley for next year. We think we're going to have more local renters again next year. And we really want to do kind of a deeper dive on lesser touristed areas. So we're looking at a loop, actually we're developing one in Wenatchee.
Oh, really?
I'll send you the GPS coordinates.
Okay.
And where we don't have exclusive sites, what we then do is we actually reach out to landowners on a website called HipCamp, and we build relationships with them and say, hey, can you carve out an exclusive site for our renters? We'll prepay for the year, and that will be available for them. And so if you go to our renter portal and you have the password, we have, maybe 25 additional sites across all the itineraries recommended, where if you show up in your Peace van, they know who you are, and they're just, maybe they have a s'more kit for you or some other little touch that we've dialed in for you at that site.
That's great. I think that's just an amazing.
And we did a really good job of vetting them. Because we had the situation when we started this about 2 years ago, we had a funny scenario where, there was a really cool looking site outside of Portland, talked to them. It was a farm. They were lovely people. They were super stoked to partner with us. And we sent our first renters there, and they came back and they're like, oh my God, that last night was great. The farm people were great. But just so you know, it was actually like a cannabis farm. And, they were cool with it, but they're like, it's kind of harvest time, and it was a little awkward. And we understand they were from out of state, they were from the East Coast. They're like, we understand it's legal, like on the entire West Coast, but it was just a little kind of weird. And this was 2 years ago. So we're like, oh my God. We had no idea, they didn't like really tell us when they said farm, we didn't, think to ask. So we kind of, go a little deeper now after that. And we still have that partnership. And they actually are a real farm. They do have other things going on. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. I always love to ask this question, and some people don't like answering it, but through the years of renting these or through the years of coming up with business ideas with Peace Vans, I'm going to guess that somebody might have had this idea that at the time sounded brilliant and then didn't work out. I always love to hear the like, well, we thought this would be great. Kind of like your story you just shared about, oops, it's an open, a functioning cannabis farm. What have you guys, has there ever been a rental story that didn't go well, that was kind of amusing maybe, but is there?
Yeah.
What hasn't worked out? Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
Let's ask that question.
Every once in a while, a renter slips through the cracks that shouldn't. And we're really diligent about like, are you sure that, this is how you want to spend your vacation? And we're really good about that. But as we grow, it's really hard. And some people are really persistent. And so, every year there's a couple renters that slip through the cracks. And this one wasn't really their fault, but they're non-native English speakers. They called us from Kennedy Airport, having just landed from Beijing, and we're on a flight to Seattle, and had never camped. And I don't know, somehow we got the insurance approved, and I felt really bad. And they showed up, and they didn't know how to use the cooler.
Oh,
they sent a picture of a cooler with food in it from the grocery store, saying like, well, how does this work? And I said, well, you have to put ice in it. Like, well, won't that melt? And I was like, yeah, you need to put more ice in it. You just have to keep doing that. But the great part is they ended up like having an amazing trip. But things that didn't work out, we launched this gear rental business.
Okay.
I had this passionate idea that, and again, like local families want to go camping. All their gears may be like moldy in the basement, or like they're too intimidated because like their neighbors got the nicest, greatest stuff, and their stuff is like, or they just don't go camping. So I was like, we're already like cleaning gear all summer long, and so let's buy a bunch of gear and package it up and rent it to people that want to go camping. And I was like really passionate about it. And we launched the business, and it just didn't get the traction I thought it would. It was really popular with like festival goers, like to the Gorge, Like we sold out for those weekends. But we really struggled with local families. And I think, some of it might have been the price point. I think afterwards, we did some interviews and there was a bit of guilt. Like, well, I have all the gear, and even though it's not good or it's imperfect, like I just feel guilty renting it. I don't feel right. And I thought the value proposition of like, use it, get it dirty, drop it off, never see it again would be worth the price point. But it just kind of, it wasn't. So that didn't really work out. We've really ratcheted down the body and paint restoration work we do. I mean, that's just like, talk about like a non-profitable business.
Well, hasn't paint in the automotive industry, hasn't that gotten very regulated? And you've got to, you can't just like spray. You've got to have like a booth with ventilation systems. And you really need to invest in like PPE for your team. And it's not a pleasant kind of thing. So, yeah. So when you restore vehicles, then are you outsourcing the paint and body work now?
Yeah. We found some good partners to outsource it to, and we'll either manage the process or you can manage the process, and then we'll pick up the mechanical restoration.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think that's a smart move. I wouldn't.
Yeah. It's just not. We looked at reinvesting in that, and it's frankly, it's an art form, and it's really hard to hire that level of craftsmanship in the city of Seattle.
Right. Random question that just popped in my brain. With when we restore these vehicles, I don't think you're running down to your local AutoZone to pick up a part.
Yeah, no.
Where are you guys having to make part? I mean, are you having to manufacture things?
It's everything. About 75% of the parts are available. From or from kind of regular vendors. About 15%, 20% come from specialty vendors, highly specialized. And then we have just a stash of parts. We'll buy a non-running van and we'll harvest it, and we'll put, like when we tore the van apart to make it electric, I mean, we squirreled away some very precious, tidbits off that van. And then, we don't sell used parts, but if we're restoring a van and you can't get, that heater cable, like, we've got a stash of them and we'll recondition it. And we generally just, bill for the labor to install that and give away the high quality, good used part. And, but we have all sorts of things just hidden away in various stashes. And then we have a network of people. We can sort of, people call us, we call them, like the axle shaft for the automatic transmissions on the Vanagons is hard to come by. And the manual ones they're not the right length. And, there's things where when we find them, we hoard them.
Okay. I was wondering about that because, it's not like they're being made anymore. And
what we see increasingly is the quality of the aftermarket parts is going down.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is we're really diligent about, like, when we order a part in, making sure, even though it might be the same part number and the right vendor, that the country of origin is correct. Because you can get, 367-444-0177F, which is, maybe that's like a wheel bearing, and it's, manufactured by Febby, and, which is a German company, but like the country of origin is actually China. And we're like, no, we want the one that's actually country of origin is Germany. Same part number, same manufacturer. So you got to really. And some people will be like, well, I found the exact same thing on the internet for like half the price. We're like, yeah, but it was made in
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, my parts guy literally sometimes will smell a part when it comes in. Like I like, he thinks he can like determine like the quality. There's like an olfactory. It's actually quite obsessive and hilarious to watch. Yeah, he'll like smell a part, and we're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I can just tell, whether it's like an original German part or not." It's crazy.
That's hysterical.
Yeah, it is.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you're not working on piece vans, what do you like to do in the area for fun and excitement?
I mean, obviously, I try to get out as much as possible. There's a bit of the cobbler's kid has no shoes. Like I don't get out as much as I should in all the vans that are at my disposal. But I've been really trying to do that. I mean, we as a company and I as an individual, we try to be really involved in the local community. We're like this year in COVID, like we're really fortunate that our business is thriving and we're doing really well when so many people aren't. And so, really finding ways to give back. We're going to like do a giveaway soon for restaurant and independent venue workers, like to give them a free rental or a couple of free rentals, just because like it's so stressful now. And we have these vans, and like if you can get away for a weekend, that can make a huge difference. And we did that for frontline healthcare workers over the summer, and just find ways to really take the fortunate position we're in and give back. Like someone asked me yesterday after like Congress passed the new stimulus bill and the new PPP package, they're like, are you going to go for it? I was like, no, like we don't need it. Like there's so many more companies that need it. And in fact, like we're really going to try to really find a way to share the fortune we've had this year and going into next year.
That's commendable. That's great. So I always ask people about food and drink, and even with the time of COVID, it's kind of hard. But if you could go, so you're down in Soto, and let's say you're going to run for lunch. So I'm going to give you your guidelines. Even though the owner, you got an hour for lunch. You can't have that good 3 martini lunch. I know. Sorry. Well, actually, now from the tax thing, you can't.
They slipped that freaking thing into the bill.
Yeah. Anyway, but we won't go there.
Okay.
So you're going to go for lunch somewhere around Soto. Where's a place that you would go for lunch?
There's a little like pizza place, super high quality pizza called Slice Box, but their salads are impeccable. Really? Like impeccable salads. Like you wouldn't think the quality of salad is that high, but like their kale salad is like got tons of veggies, raw kale, this amazing vinaigrette. It's got sliced mushrooms, walnuts, chickpeas. It's a beautiful salad.
Okay.
There's I like to go for nostalgia's sakes. There's a barbecue place, Jack's Barbecue. And he's got the largest smokers in the state of Washington. But what I love about Jack and I shared a wall when we worked at Microsoft. His office was next to mine. And now he's in Soto, and he's like the barbecue king of Washington State. And I'm in Soto, and I'm like the camper van king. And it's just fun to like kind of reminisce with him, and we like to have like a codependent sharing group of how we got out of high tech.
What, if you don't mind me asking, what did you do at Microsoft? What was your?
I was so lucky. I had the best experience there and the best jobs. I really had 3 different jobs. Like I worked in PR, which was actually which was really fun.
Okay.
I'd like to joke the only 2 places you want to learn PR is the White House and Microsoft. And this is like the White House prior to this administration. And so I really was fortunate. I was on the marketing side, and I was fortunate enough to learn the discipline of PR really, really well. It was a really eye-opening experience to really see how that machine works. And then I was lucky enough to pivot over to working on piracy, like pirated Windows and pirated Office. And I ran the first segmentation model on that. Like not all pirates are the same. Like there's actually people that are unwilling pirates, and there's willing pirates, and there's all this. And I unfortunately was tethered to a renegade engineering team that did all this crazy stuff. So we had to, there's always a lot of cleanup, after they would, they were supposed to release a tool to 2,000 people in Sweden. They released to the entire population. And then Sweden launched a pirated software, political party, and then my last job there, I worked with governments to figure out how to get laptops to large populations, whether it's the entire kindergarten class of Guatemala, or every civil servant in Botswana, or, like these like the government would, want to, create like a technology access program. And it was really, really like a fascinating, I would travel around the world and met with ministries of, all sorts of ministries and prime ministers. And, I joke the only thing I miss about Microsoft, and there's a lot of things, but I do miss flying around the world like business class and kind of being ushered through, because oftentimes I was meeting with like the Ministry of Finance or something, like I wouldn't go through the regular customs.
Right. You'd get the express lane through. And
it was privilege, but it was really fun. And I'm a big foodie. And so your earlier question about where would I eat in soda, just having the opportunity to travel the world and to eat really just awesome things was really, I was so eternally grateful for that experience, and really had a great experience when I worked there, but happy to have left.
Okay. Well, and now you've got this business and this enterprise, and you're lovingly restoring iconic vehicles.
Yeah,
so
it's a lot of fun.
My hat is off. Well, why don't we wrap this up by you sharing with the audience where people can find you? I'm going to say online, obviously in the Soto district of Seattle, tongue planted in cheek there. But if somebody wants to find out more about you, maybe rent a van, restore something, pick up a conversion, where can they find you?
Yeah, the best way to learn about Peace Vans is, really on the internet at peacevans.com. Each of the businesses does have their own URL. There's Peace Vans Modern, Peace Vans Rentals, Peace Vans Seattle for the Vintage Shop, and Peace Vans Electric. But really, they all also live at peacevans.com as well. And if you find yourself in the Soto neighborhood, it's a little challenging with COVID, but, prior to that, like drop-ins were so much fun. I mean, we would have people coming by all the time, and we would do events and things like that. So you can visit peacevans.com, sign up for our newsletters, and also social media. We tend to use Instagram. So when we were doing events and those kinds of fun things, a lot of that would be pushed out through Instagram. And that's where we do the giveaways and things like that. So really, I would say peacevans.com and peacevans on Instagram.
Okay. Well, thank you for being on with me today. It was a lot of fun for me, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, Scott, great to hang out and chat, and really enjoyed this a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
Your podcast is fun to listen to, and feel free if you have any follow-up questions. And if I'm in Wenatchee, we were considering coming out there to look at this site. It looks like a gorgeous spot. It's one of our owns 40 acres.
Okay.
And they're like, you can take the lower 5 and build a campsite. And so it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, if you're in the neighborhood, give me a shout.
Sounds good, Scott. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Awesome. Take care. Have a great day.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.